everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity of sharing. And thank you, Alessandra, for introducing us to this beautiful community of Ecoversities. We're really grateful for that.
Thank you, Sarah, for helping us and hosting. So great to meet in this space, in this musical space, a sonic vibration tonight. Thank you, Greg and Vishva, for being with us, and everyone who is listening or will be listening.
And thank you, Silvia and Graeme, for sparkling the fireflies at one moment in Salento on the threshold. If you remember that session between 2 years before we thought the world would change so drastically, we were already thinking of how sonically to get together, even and despite the distances and circumstances.
Yeah, that was now seems like a very long time ago, but the energy, I guess, is still flowing. So, I mean, maybe we can sort of say a little bit about how Firefly Frequencies began. Actually, the very first idea for the radio came at the first European Ecoversities gathering.
European gathering, right? Yeah.
And that was when, Alessandra, exactly?
2019 to 20. It was exactly the New Year week, 3 days before, 4 days later.
Yeah.
Just before the New Year's, in this passage in between
the COVID and all the epochal trans changes that started later on, and we called this session of Ecoversities gathering on the threshold or at the threshold, and it was like a real threshold, semantical one.
Yeah, and so then when we were, one of the things we were discussing were desires that we had to do something together, and one of the things that where Silvia and I was quite pressing, an idea we've had for quite a long time now, was to create a radio. But then, I mean, the need, those things happen when there is a need for them to happen. And in actual fact, the radio actually got going really when we were kind of sort of well into the first year of COVID, and with this sort of sense of isolation on the one hand, and the kind of the forms of gathering that were, you know, happening on video and so on, feeling those forms to be somewhat, at least from a sonic perspective, I mean, I can speak from a sonic perspective, quite sort of maybe asphyxiating or limiting in some ways. So the radio was like also a sort of idea of how could we actually send things to each other that were not sort of, you know, they could be freed from this kind of communicational sort of loop that we were kind of in. And it would also permit sort of creation, distance, you know, this idea that that sound could, in a sense, form bridges over the barriers that were there between us, and do so in kind of interesting ways. So that was really the beginning. I think it was around when it was September, October of 2020, when we started this adventure. And now we've been going for nearly 5 years, or 4 years. 4 years. And obviously a lot of things have changed since then.
Yes. Are you taking a pause, inviting us to continue this retracing of our beginning? Maybe retracing of our intentions. Yeah, the idea and why the radio also stamped out of the Ecoversities family and this reflection how to reimagine forms of learning. We understood that the potential of radio also as a space for our pedagogies. Radio as a space and radio as pedagogy, where we could converge different voices, different languages, different music, but also different ways of hearing and relating and becoming together. And radio created this space that could be at the same time very intimate, because when you record someone or something, or even in the process of making a sound piece for the radio, the process is very intimate, is very bring you very close to what you are listening and recording, but then at the same time also has this possibility to reach out to people that you don't even know when and how far or how close they are from you. So this space that is a common space where we really invited a lot of people to participate, although maybe for now it's a core group, and definitely Silvia and Graeme have been such a motor to bring such an incredible variety of material that tonight we hope to share with you. But the invitation, the intention was really to have this as a place of convergence, as a place where different echoes and different reverberation could be created, and allowing people to share their sounds, their voicings, their favorite music, or their books, the reading from books that people can write or read from others. So this was an open invitation, and the idea was also to learn together how to do it, to learn how to produce this space of encounter that the radio could be.
No, it's just a very fresh memory from yesterday's encounter with arts. We just went here in Linz to the museum to see the show that is completely and totally and fully dedicated to transmission and voicing, to what the voice can produce in the society. And one of the videos really touched me very much, because there was this question: how far can your voice carry? That's exactly what it is about. How far can your voice carry? How, where is the listener? We don't know. But can we reach out to the listener? This is the question. Who is the listener? Our very close friend who is far from us.
Yes, so radio as a space for weaving our relations. It's the way in which this space of the Fireflies has emerged is really highly relational, and it's through friends and friends of friends that we gather, and through our traveling, through our encounters, through this witnessing of moment of knowledge being shared in this very way that allow our listening to focus on listening, to give centrality to listening, maybe more than the usual visual landscape or space of the enunciation that is often predominant in our modes of being together. So this was how we intended.
Just to connect to that, we've just shared screen with the web page of Firefly Frequencies, and we would like to propose to listen together to a poem by Refa al-Rer, a Palestinian poet and teacher who was assassinated last year together with 6 members of his family in the Gaza Strip. And this poem is very special because it's read by Rafef Ziada, who is herself a Palestinian performer, and poet. So we invite you to listen to this and think about the Palestinian struggle.
Firefly.
I'll start with a poem by Rifat al-Arir, who was assassinated by Israel in the latest acts of genocide. If I must die, you must live. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail. So a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite that you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. If I must die, let it be a tale.
So this poem became also an invitation because Rafat asked us to continue the tale and the kite he's building with his poem. So it's actually at the origin of a collective film we've made with another 100 filmmakers continuing the poem. And you're very welcome to check the website. It's called Some Strings, and it was initiated by an Algerian filmmaker. And now it's like touring the world with all the difficulties that we have in screening the film, or also accepting invitations with the institutions that are involved in supporting directly the genocide. So it was important for us to start with listening to this. And maybe we can open up a kind of conversation of resonances and ask you, what did you hear when you heard the poem?
When I heard the call of the radio, it was looking for the same word, resonance, signal over noise. But I did not know what shape it would have taken. When you are in community and you trust that someone has seen something and then they want you to see something, to escalate it to a passive engagement to an active engagement, their own reflections change when they share it with someone they care about. That levels of abstraction that you're climbing on top of each other, because that's what we are doing. We are abstracting a incidence. We are abstracting that incidence into a poem. That incidence is being abstracted into another sensation of reading it out. That is being abstracted by us as a sense of seeing, and then there is a lot of clutter in between. There is a lot of clutter in between. So when you're trying to find signal over noise, how do you find signal over noise because there's too much. How do you create better your abstraction? How do you bungle a little bit in between?
I've heard courage to write poetry in the moment when it doesn't seem possible at all, and courage of reading a poem when it's time to cry.
I heard reaching out, like that opening lines of I think it was if I die you must live, and like the things that you must do because I have died. And I just feel that's so powerful because in our times of looking away and denial and just living in our, our own separate lives, I felt that was a very powerful reaching out of like, no, we're connected and there's things you must do on behalf of those. There's things that I must do, things you must do on behalf of those who are not walking on the earth anymore. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Alice. I just wanted to add to that the powerful image of the kite, like the string. I feel like it just like so connects with that reaching out. It's like that connection, that they're, just I feel tugged by it, like I feel the tugging on the string.
Thank you for these beautiful comments. I must say we feel less lonely now that we heard your voices. Anybody else wants to share something? I mean, the idea today is really like a journey we take together through different voices and sounds of the radio. And I mean, I must say that for us, it's a great opportunity also to invite you to be part of Firefly Frequencies. And maybe we can see towards the end how we can concretize this so that we are becoming a kind of bigger community. So we don't want to rush things, but maybe, what? No. Yeah, maybe we can listen to another piece that we find also very strong.
But maybe before that, we can sort of talk a little bit about how the radio is structured. We had this idea, and it's maybe connected to what Alessandra was saying about the pedagogical aspect of radio. was to think about methodologies or ways of making, rather than actual sort of subject areas, to look at how radio tends to be often divided, particularly between music and spoken word, as a kind of primary divide, and then also other kinds of sounds that often are not let into the radio or are filtered out of broadcasts. So, for example, the awareness, the sonic awareness one might have of the space that one is in when one records something, that, like recording something in a studio where everything is very perfect, voice is to the foreground, and everything else kind of falls away. We were sort of also in our invitation imagining kind of contributions or participation that were situated in different ways, in different places. So one of the areas where, for example, one of the areas we wanted to explore was precisely this question of voicing. And in that kind of situated sort of way. So this, would sort of correspond to the idea of like reading texts, or which could be, as Alessandra said, texts that one had written oneself, or texts that simply, one really wanted to share. You really want to share with other people. And so what we just heard there, is an example of that, fairly urgent example of that. But then there are other examples which, relate more to perhaps to poetry that, comes from a long time ago, or that is maybe, I don't know, slightly removed from, actuality. And also people who are reading texts that they've written. One of the very first texts we got for Firefly was a text by Michael Pasig called In the Beginning Was the Firefly. And that kind of speaks to why we call this radio Firefly Frequencies, because he relates, as we do, to the idea of Pasolini, who wrote an essay called The Disappearance of Fireflies, where he was talking about how from the 1960s on, the very oppressive industrial culture, which he says was preparing the ground towards a new fascism, was in a sense eliminating the presence of fireflies. And so fireflies becomes a very, very, on the one hand, fragile and maybe, to use a problematic word, resilient presence, but also in its intermittence, kind of glow that happens intermittently. So Firefly Frequencies is also something which is also about what we could call continuous intermittence. It's not a radio station that's 24/7. It's not producing all the time. It's producing when there is a need. It's posting or sending a signal when something, when there is a need to do so. And so it produces this idea of continuous intermittence. So we'll look at a little bit of example of how this question of methodology has led to the invention of a certain number of what we could call hybrid forms. And we'll begin with one which a series of programs that we call ambient thought. And ambient thought relates to a kind of form of methodology that we call digital undercommons. And it's about mobilizing forms of, let's say, media or archives in different ways. And one of the things about ambient thought was we've discovered, there are a lot of conferences or panel, discussions or things that we find on internet. And very often there is some very, very interesting things which are said, but in the idea of the rerun of those things being said, or to sort of go to them after the fact, sometimes they lose the intensity of actually being there. So what we thought was we would think about how to maybe create some kind of effective means of remobilizing, say, I don't know, academic conferences, art talks, things like that, through a kind of a form of remixing or kind of versioning, you could call it. And so this is how ambient thought was born. And it was about the idea that in order to re-listen to something, we maybe need to rediscover a rhythm in it. And so we've made some mixes of some interesting talks that we found in the last 2 or 3 years. And we want to play you an extract now from one by Sueli Rolnik, the Brazilian psychoanalyst and curator, who made a very interesting talk called Decolonizing the Unconscious, in which she refers to the practice, the artistic practice of Lydia Clark and her series of works called Caminhando.
Gracias.
Sorry?
Somebody joined us. Hello.
So we're going to play a short extract of this. And basically what we tried to do was to find kind of sympathetic vibrations in music that would, in a sense, create another kind of rhythm of the talk. So it's kind of like you could call it a kind of DJ remix of the talk. And so we're going to play a little bit from the conclusion of Sueli Rolnik's talk, if I can find the exact place.
I think you launched it.
I have to play it first.
Anthropophile is getting worse and worse, because in art camp, something that is the art camp, so concentration camp of the essence of life as power of creation and differentiation, now under cognitive capitalism it becomes a kind of extermination camp because even there is a kind of operation of pimping of this potency. What matters is the dimension of creation in its initial state, a power of emergence endlessly subsuming the contingent. Now let's see what matters with reactive micropolitics, what I call anthropophalo-gocentric thinking, homogenetic, identitarian, colonial, capitalistic, and its moral compass. I make my desire makes its cuts, but avoiding all the time the question mark. And the result is this kind of life. A generic life, a sterile life, a miserable life. Why I said ethical compass and moral compass. If you understand the essence of life is a power of creation and differentiation, an endless power of creation and differentiation, when I made my, when desire made its cut, trying to invent something that will be a mirror of this tension, and it will result in something that will reconfigure the actual cartography. When desire is doing that, what he's orienting desire is not just life, is the will to protect and to affirm life. But if I have my experience of the forces totally anesthetized, if I have my access to sensation, to this tension between forms and forces, totally obstructed, But I am in this unease anyway, I can avoid it. So I have two possibilities. Or I take chemic in order to neutralize everything quickly, or instead of consuming pharmacology medicaments, I can consume drug, but I can consume everything. But if we take that from a micro-political point of view, for me, the most important and successful micro-political operation of that culture is the anesthesia of what I call a knowing body, the anesthesia of this capacity to be affected by the world as a field of forces, and this obstruction of our access to sensation, to this tension, in order to affirm the ethical, political, and cultural function of thought. Thought becomes totally submitted, no matter what, to consume. We are like zombies that lose totally our life compass in order to take our choice, to take our decisions, and to invent and reinvent life. I agree that the Western modern culture is inseparable of colonization. Those different micropolitics are there everywhere. From a micro-political point of view, this active or reactive micropolitics, they are not a privilege of a geographic place in the planet. No? So what I propose differently of that is a permanent decolonization of the unconscious and its creative eruptions. And to finish, I have 8 suggestions to decolonize the unconscious. De-anesthetizing the vulnerability to the forces. Reactivating the knowing body. Unobstructing the access to sensations. Keeping oneself within the tension of the uncanny, until an utterance capable of actualizing it, bearing its pulsation, is created. Holding on to the temporality of the creative process. Holding on to desire. Not negotiating the unnegotiable. Exercising thought in its ethical, political, and clinical function. So, to finish, this presentation is dedicated to all those who desire and act, because if you desire and don't act, you breathe pestilence. To all those who, with their acts of creation, driven by desire, try to convert, revert, pervert, subvert, deprogram, deinstall, de-establish, deconfigure, defetishize, disarm, undo, take down, empty, or simply quit with the colonial unconscious. Thank you.
Okay, so there we had an example of the ambient thought series as a way of finding a kind of new respiration or rhythm for thought. And in this case, Strally Rolnick's voice really lends itself to this kind of treatment.
Yeah, so maybe Alessandra and Nikolay, you want to play something or react?
I mean, this radio is actually somehow a ping pong table of the messages, sonic messages that friends are kind of passing to each other over the time and space, and those messages are so beautiful. Like for this piece of Swahili, I mean, I have re-listened to it. I don't know how many times, because it's so amplifying, so energizing, so full of hope, and her voice together with the music, with the tone of it, with the length of it, really makes yet another level of sense making, right? And it arrives directly within me, and in certain moments I really need this combination of sounds, voice, music, and sense. And
Yeah,
really
thank you for that.
appreciate,
Really
yes,
beautiful,
yes.
these
It's a
two. And
great gift.
I want just to quickly respond to the question we are circulating. What did you hear, or what did you feel? What did you see? Because this piece is so full of stimulation. You can see in the vibration of her voice, you can see her, you can hear her, you can sense the energy that also what she writes and what she invokes as to waking up from this numbing of the body that capitalism produce and consumerism produce. It's really, it passes through her voice, and somehow I felt a connection to the first beautiful poem in which I heard a call for action. I heard this demand of even through and beyond death, there is something to do. There is something, there is an action that to be taken, and this invitation of taking action, yeah, in the end, she combined desire with action. It's still resonated also with the demand I felt in the first poem. Just wanted to bring back this also desire as not separated from a desire of justice, a desire of dignity, a desire for freedom, a desire for equity. And I feel in both the pieces you brought, there is this strong invitation of starting from there, from that power of the demand and of the action that is upon us to take.
But maybe weaving together, what do you think, what we can propose? There are two options for now. Maybe we go for the voicings again, and to Adrian Rich piece about natural resources. That would make sense since we are in the framework of Ecoversities. And Adrian Rich is an incredible feminist poet, one of our ancestral kind of lineages and references that we would like to bring up, because her voice is very, very loud and echoing again and again, and her criticism of modernist capitalism before even this framework was invented or described. We've heard from her poetry this call for action as well. So I think that will be relevant piece to continue with, and then we will give a little bit of a framework. Alessandra will put it up. It's number 34, episode number 34 of the voicings.
listening to Firefly Frequencies.
Resources. The core of the strong hill, not understood. The mulch heat of the underwood, where unforeseen the forest fire unfurls, the heat, the privacy of the mines. The rainbow laboring to extend herself, where neither men nor cattle understand, arching her lustres over rut and stubble, purely to reach where she must go. The emerald lying against the silver vein, waiting for light to reach it, breathing in pain. The miner laboring beneath the ray of the headlamp, awaits like death. The miner is not a metaphor. She goes into the cage like the rest is flung. Downward by gravity like them must change, her body like the rest to feed a crevice, to work a load. On her the peak hangs heavy, the bad air lies thick. The mountain presses in on her with boulder, timber, fog. Slowly, the mountain dust descends into the fibers of her lungs. The cage drops into the dark. The routine of life goes on. A woman turns a doorknob, but so slowly, so quietly, that no one wakes. And it is she alone who gazes into the dark of bedrooms, ascertains how they sleep, who needs her touch, what window blows the eyes of February into the room, and who must be protected. It is only she who sees who was trained to see. Could you imagine a world of women only? The interviewer asked. Can you imagine a world where women are absent? He believed he was joking. Yet, I have to imagine at one and then the same moment both, because I live in both. Can you imagine, the interviewer asked, a world of men? He thought he was joking. If so, then, a world where men are absent. Absently, warily, I answered, yes. The phantom of the man who would understand the lost brother, the twin. For him did we leave our mothers, deny our sisters over and over. Did we invent him, conjure him over the cheering log? Nights laid in the snowbound cabin, did we dream, scry his face in the liquid embers, the man who would dare to know us?
You're listening to Firefly Frequencies. Should we propose another round of this question? What did we hear? Or what did we feel? What did we see through this reading, this voicing?
I found that very moving, and the woman checking on her loved ones in the night to be sure that everybody was safe asleep was just tore my guts out, because so many of us so many people are in such a violent, precarious situation where they can't do that, and it just tore me up.
Um, Thank you so much. Yes, that's a very strong poem. And we brought this particular piece to also contextualize somehow how the possibilities of this radio Firefly Frequencies to be activated publicly, because besides it's being transmitted constantly online, one of the techniques, one of the methods that we engage with is addressing the listening sessions, such as this one, towards the people who are around, who are gathering physically or digitally at one point and being together, listening together, and then corresponding to the navigated listening session. And this piece was one of those activations of Firefly Frequencies that we have experienced together with a group of European gathering of Ecoversities in the southeast of Italy 1 year ago. And this poem was proposed by an artist and activist and feminist, Carmen Jose, and she read it specifically for the section that is called Voicings on our radio. So that's how so many voices with so many languages, so many accents can become together and can become part of Fireflies. And
this section.
Silvia.
Sorry, to connect to what Maura was saying, for me it was also moving to hear the cicadas and the sound of nature around as if they are watching over us. And I felt this strong alliance between the poem and the cicadas watching over, like a kind of vigil. And yeah, I just wanted to say.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes, I mean, in this radio, we always we also question how can we bring the more than human with us? How can we connect to other elements, to the other beings, to the living? How can that be brought in ways that are not so much intellectually or anthropocentric, inviting also sound that can open up other forms of transmission or relations. We have experimented also in this section called biophonic assemblage with that, where we only act as vessels where we only record sound produced by the waves, by stepping into the snow, trying to capture molecular or granular forms of life and forms of communication that maybe we can only try to translate, transcribe, vehiculate in this way, but maybe the meaning escapes us. And in this way, how can we also invite a not knowing? And I feel this is a lot of the tension and the intentions of this radio, also to open space for a coming to voice, as Maria Lugones would say, for bringing the voice of those that have no voice, through the art, through the activation of those spaces that give space to those issues or to those subjects that often are not centered in the media stream landscape, in the mainstream median landscape, I wanted to say, and at the same time to try to offer a space for other encounters with other sonic experiences. And this piece is also I mean, as I was listening this struggle for this very forest where it was recorded, that right now it's calling us to come together to defend this forest that risk to be erased by a ecocidal plan of Porsche, who want to build some circuits to test green ecological electronic cars. So in a way, sometimes in a sound object, there is so much that we can hear. So this time that I listened to this, I really listened to, on one way, the power of coming together, and these moments in which we are together and we can just offer this gift of a poem, of a voice, this dear friend that now we heard their voice again in this moment after a couple of years, and then the sound of the struggles also.
But again, speaking of natural resources, feminist struggle on one front, and on the very subtle level, behind cicadas, there is very violent squeaking sound of the cars testing in this very forest, around this forest, probably minimally percepted, but it's still there. And this is a very violent kind of implementation to the whole piece. It becomes even more tragic through the deciphering of it.
And when we listened together, we activated what we were calling a pedagogical tension. We can unfold what we hear and maybe open up other conversation. This is one of the ways in which we also use the radio to recirculate and repurpose what is maybe recorded in a certain occasion and offer to other people in other time.
May I ask a question? And please forgive me if you've already done this because I came in late. I couldn't help but come in late. So I'm just really curious about your audience and your outreach and a little bit. You probably shared about your history, but I'm just curious about how you find your audience or how your audience finds you, and whom you're hoping to reach that's beyond the circle of existing love. If you've already done this, I'll learn.
We haven't covered this. Thank you for your question, Maura. I'm just a bit preoccupied because I don't know if Silvia and Graeme are still with us. They disappear from my screen. But one way in which, well, with radio, you don't really know who is the audience, who is listening and when. It's online radio, so through different ways we try to circulate the existence of this radio, hopefully without the usual social media channels that we feel are a bit problematic. So we don't push the radio so much through that, but rather through circles and counters, our own network. And recently we have become, the radio has become part of a larger radio, larger community of radios, the Lumbung radio. Lumbung means granary, and we have joined this bigger house in which many different community radio have converged. And for example, with this larger family of friends, comrades, artists, we share both our production and our audiences. And I know Graeme wanted to speak a little bit more about the Lumbung. There was a question about how we reach or how we build our audience, who are the listeners.
Or
and
how the audience reach us.
So we were starting to speak about how sometimes we bring the radio into either exhibition space or book fair spaces or art. Yes, in this case was Documenta was the context in which we met at the Station of Commons, and through that we joined this project, this larger meta convergences of radio that now we call the Lumbung Radio. And
sorry, we lost the connection. It's quite typical of Sicily. We really apologize for that. We also activate the radio a lot with students. We started a podcast, a collective podcast called The Choral Sea, where we actually work with students on a number of days to produce sound works or podcasts. And so it has also a strong pedagogical component and potential, no, Nico and Alessandra, that we want to increase in time, because we believe that it's really great if our listeners are also creators and we don't create a divide between who broadcasts and who listens, but actually our idea of Firefly from the very beginning was this constellation of people who send each other signals from different parts of the world. But I don't know, maybe you want to say something more about Lumbung?
Yeah, well, I mean, Lumbung Radio is a kind of a network of radios all over the world who we share space of broadcasting, and each of the radios has a certain number of hours per week. And I think it's also, there's a very interesting idea that came out of Lumbung, which was the idea of harvesting. And this came out of documented theme, which is also the notion that the material, which is in a sense broadcast on radios, is then, you know, open and offered to other radios to make something of. And I think that this is a very interesting dynamic that we now have with digital radio, which FM radio certainly didn't have, which was the idea that we are continually generating a past, or if you like, a pastness of the radio, and an archival sort of aspect of radio. And this means that it's not just about the immediacy of being in the present moment, it's also about listening and re-listening. And this question of re-listening, I think, is something which is quite central to the philosophy of Firefly Frequencies, also because if we can consider what we've listened to so far here, we also have this notion that there is a kind of connection, we could call it a biodynamic connection. I mean, the radio is kind of like the garden in that sense, that the different podcasts that are, you know, hosted and posted on the radio, they, over time, they gain resonance through the connections between them. So it's not like, you know, we're just simply, you know, broadcasting or hosting a variety of, you know, a very heterogeneous variety of things, but we're also thinking about the connections between those things that may only emerge over time. And in the way that listening and re-listening is also something which is imbricated with the way that the times are changing. So, you know, we can listen to something now and then considering, you know, the way that the world is evolving and, you know, not even in a particular, I mean, evolving is probably the wrong word, but those things in a sense have a different meaning, you know, over time. I mean, one of the things that we did when there was the Ukraine war started, Silvia and I took it upon ourselves to read the daily entries of the diary of Yevgenia Belarusets, which she was writing from Kiev in the first 48 days of the war. Now, those entries, which are very, very poetic and literary, but also very concrete and connected to the daily life situation there, in a way that, news broadcasts certainly are not, that in their kind of different forms of abstraction and obfuscation. Those readings are still there, and if we listen to them now, we hear something different to what we heard when we read and we listened to them a year and a half ago. So that's another, quite clearly important aspect of Firefly Frequencies, is this question of the past and future resonances that exist between programs. Silvia, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, now maybe I just want to add that for digital radio, the question of reactivating archives becomes quintessential. And because we end up with a lot of, programs, podcasts. Sometimes when we gather, we record things, we've got hours of recordings. So what we would like to experiment more is also to give recordings to people so that they would edit them and remix them themselves, meaning that we are the living archives. So we are really against this idea of the archive as a past, the place where things are fixed, stored. So another exciting thing about this idea of the harvesting and this idea of remixing is also that, people from different points of view, different cosmologies and geographies can actually rework recordings and produce and create something new. So it's now 10:20 in this part of the world. If you're okay with it, we would like to play something more from what we recorded recently. Sharing is not sorry, because we got disconnected. We just need to reconnect the sharing.
I think it's the host needs to
is the host there?
I think that, because we got Hello.
Andrea was the new host.
Hi, I'm your host. Yes,
Hello.
I'm listening.
Hello. Could you just turn the sharing on again, because we got actually we lost the connection, and now we're not able to share anymore.
Yeah, sure. Let me put you also as co-host.
Yes.
Okay. Very great.
Yeah, there you are.
The sound.
No, you're in the wrong thing. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about this glitch. So we were thinking that maybe we can play something from a very kind of inhabited series that is called Reclaiming Pedagogies. Something we recorded during a recent trip to Dakar, where we joined the African Art Book Fair in Dakar, and we had the opportunity to meet a lot of people in the city, but also publishers coming from different African countries. So this in particular is a conversation we recorded with Ali Beta, and maybe we listen and you will talk later.
Firefly
Frequencies. Hello everybody, we're here in Dakar, in the neighborhood of Wakam, where we've come to meet Ali Beta, multidisciplinary artist, musician, filmmaker, and founder of Kenu Lab, le laboratoire des imaginaires.
Me personally, that was my house. I was living here for many years, 8 years, almost 10 years. And then I was doing a lot of music, films. I make films too, theater. So this is the three main my practice. And I was traveling a lot in Africa and Europe. And then I started having questions on my mind. What is the use of what we are doing if we're not able to connect it with our communities? You know, because, yeah, in this decolonial approach of what we're doing, I was very critical of the establishment, galleries, you know, all these elites that have this theoretical blah blah. I'm tired of it. I was sick of it. I was very tired of it. And if I get back, I studied sociology, socio-anthropology, that's what I studied. And I traveled a lot into Africa. Mali, I went to see the Dogon, I stayed there 2 months. I went to Cameroon, see the Bassa, I went to the Gnawas in Morocco. So I was really interested of the functions of art in our history, in our own practice. Who called theater theater is not African. So it's somebody else who decided this is theater. Who called the names that we give to things. So I start questioning the name. Yeah, all this. And if I translate it into my language, I find different words to say music. There's not only one word. You can say way, it's a song. Way can mean a poem. You can say khalam, which is the instrument. Khalam, which can be the way of playing music. So when I open it into my own languages, so I speak Serer and Wolof, it's wider. It's much more wide. And I start deconstructing this world of, okay, and all this establishment that they built around it. We decided theater is here and then this here, but no, we know theater, it's the art of ceremony. It's the art of putting words into action in my culture. Theater is how do you embody words and make them live. So we are a culture of orality. Yeah, so I get back to that, all my studies around that, and I decided, said, okay, you know what? When you want to start something, you start under your feet. There's a saying, a proverb in Wolof, say, when you cultivate, you start under your feet, you don't start there. So I said, so you know what, I don't need to wait for money coming from Europe because I'm very critical of that. I don't need to wait for anything, and I look around myself. The mamas that are selling peanuts here, the kids in the culture, they know I'm an artist when I was living here. So there was also always this attraction to you. And I said, you know, I have to start here. Because as long as these people, my neighbors, don't understand what I do, I don't see the use to going to Amsterdam in very shicky-micky places and play the intellectual and shit. I'm like, okay, you know what? I start here. And then I said, I moved from the house because after I lived here, my friends start coming, other artists, and I said, you know, I want to create a center. Let's create, and we start a collective. And then we created the center. And we call it Kenu because we think that culture, on dit la culture, c'est la fondation. Yes, but foundations are not enough. Once you have foundation, you need to build up a house. And if you need to build up the house, you need strong pillars that can hold the house. So that's the idea of Kenu. And the laboratory, lab oratoire, orality of the imaginaries. So because all the decolonial work and the self-esteem work that we have to do, it's first in the imaginaries. And first how to understand that modernity is an imaginary that is brought from Europe. What does it mean, modernity? All the things that we use, democracy, are imaginaries that are built up somewhere else. And because we are colonial history, so what are our own imaginaries? And how our imaginaries from Serer, from Lebu, our vision of the world, of what is religion, of what is death, what is life, how do they connect, fight with the other imaginaries? So we need to create a laboratory where we can check which type of imaginaries, because I consider imaginary is like coding. If you code a robot, he will do what you code.
Okay, so that was a short extract from a conversation we had with Ali Beta Salusar in Dakar in relation to this artist cultural collective and his friends created Kenu Lab as a kind of, as he says, as a way of, in a sense, thinking about how to create a kind of cultural resource and also a pedagogical resource for people in his own area. And it's sort of interwoven with performance that he gave, vocal experimental performance. So we're always, in a sense, trying to interweave all these different elements together in these even when just getting people so.
And Ali Beta is now become really close friend and collaborator on a new film. He's himself and his community are really obsessed with the idea of offering young people reasons not to live, not to come to Europe, not to cross the Mediterranean Sea, not to be attracted by this false promise of the West and Europe in particular. So we witness a really great growing community of people that have now put together a music label, a cinema editing kind of lab, a theater company. So for us living in Europe and especially in Sicily, where the question of death is omnipresent 24 hours a day, to go to Senegal and see what incredible work they are doing to avoid this other genocide that Europe is responsible for was really a blessing. And it's also partly thanks to Ecoversities, because we managed to get a grant to realize the podcast. We made 6, you just heard a bit. So yeah, just to say that we're also very grateful for that. And it was a life-changing experience. Maybe Nika wants to play something of his band, right?
Well, now I cannot say no. I didn't plan, but yes, we can go to Angry Notes. There is that's another chapter, another. So it's not even podcast. It's a series of friends who, time to time, offer us some gifts of their tunes that is a protest music of various genres, written in various languages, recorded in so many different situations, countries, and under different political circumstances. I sort of co-initiated it with my band, which is Arkady Kot's band, which is based on political translation as a method. So we can play any tune that you prefer, Silvia and Graeme. So it's up to you to choose.
Questo è il fiore del partigiano. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Questo è il fiore del partigiano morto per la libertà.
Сегодня утром светило солнце. О, белла чао, белла чао, белла чао. Сегодня утром оно подняло и в город вывело меня. Скажи, подруга, мне до свидания. О, белла чао, белла чао, белла чао, чао, чао. Я за свободу жестоко драться с друзьями ухожу сейчас. Все, кто сажал нас и наживался. О, белла чао, белла чао, белла чао, чао, чао. Все, кто глумился, пытал и грабил, в покое не оставим мы. По переулкам и магистралям. О, белла чао, белла чао, белла чао. Как итальянские партизаны мы будем драться до конца. Как югославские партизаны мы будем драться до конца. Как белорусские партизаны мы будем драться hey. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Choć jest okej, choć na ekranie jeszcze tak sądzę, świecisz mnie. Choć jest okej, choć na ekranie jeszcze tak sądzę, świecisz mnie. Choć za решеткой, да хоть в могиле, лишь ты, как солнце, светишь мне.
Okay.
So I think we can maybe end on that.
That
note.
was a really beautiful offering, Nico, to
Well, and it was recorded on distance with the friends in different lockdowns in different cities, basically. It is as it is made during the pandemics, it is a document of how people really overcame the impossibility of being in presence together. So,
and I love how you frame it, Graeme, these past and future resonances. And to me, this is really past. And the coda, this final piece you chose, really talks about past and future resistances to, and through resonance, if we can build and weave that, and those through different geographies, different voices. I was really feeling a lot through this little programming tonight, how radio can really become a space for witnessing, also witnessing something that happened somewhere else, and one can bring to another elsewhere. And so in this witnessing, in this mirroring, in this weaving together, there is recognition, there is connection, and as a form of resistance. As you open with this beautiful poem, this seemed to be the perfect closing of this time together tonight. And I'm still resonating with this very important question that Alibet proposed. What is the use of what we are doing if we don't connect with our community, if it doesn't serve us to connect with our community? And in this moment, and even through Ecoversity, the community is there, but is often dispersed, is interlocal, is transnational, translocal, transversal. So in a way, the radio was a tool that we felt to develop, also to bring the community together in moment of very intimate sharing. And I don't know how much time we have still, but it's in this doing, it's also let's take this occasion to open up the invitation again, because we want to expand this community of the radio, and we would like for those in Ecoversity to use this tool more with us and through what was already being created in a dialogue with what is already there. So please do get in touch with us and consider this as a tool to share your stories, your urgency, your struggles, to connect with your visions.
So maybe with these words of invitation, we can hear some music just to wrap up. And thank you very much for having us. And certainly, Nico and Alessandra, this is really a great sign that we have to continue. And I really feel full of desire to do this more, to open more to other communities and involve people. And it was really great. So I tried to share screen again. And we can go A lullaby.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We have a section that is called Lullaby for the Revolution, and we can choose Lestaka, which is one that also Nikolay played with his group.
Avessi se te'n parlava de bon matí al portal, mentre el sol esperàvem, els carros veien passar. Si set que no veus l'estaca, on estem tots lligats. Si no podem desfer-nos-en, mai no podrem caminar. Si estirem tots, ella caurà i molt de temps no pot durar. Segur que tomba, 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 ben corcada deu ser ja. Si jo l'estiro fort per aquí i tu l'estires fort per allà, segur que tomba, tomba, tomba i ens podrem alliberar.
Però si set falt motent ja, les mans les van escorxant, i quan la força se me'n va, ella sempre és més gran. Penser-se que està perdida, però és que si set pesa tant, que cops la força m'oblida, torna'm a dir el teu cant. Si estirem tots, ella caurà i molt de temps no pot durar. Segur que tomba, 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 ben corcada deu ser ja. Si tu l'estires fort per aquí i jo l'estiro fort per allà, segur que tomba, tomba, tomba i ens podrem alliberar.
L'avessi set ja no diures,
Mal ben que serem portat,
el qui sap cap a quin indret,
i jo a sota el portal.
i quan passem als bailets,
Estiro e coi per cantar,
el darrer cant ben siset,
el darrer que em va ensenyar.
si estirem tots, ella caurà i molt de temps no pot durar. Segur que tomba, 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 ben corcada deu ser ja. Si tu l'estires fort per aquí i jo l'estiro fort per allà, segur que tomba, tomba, tomba i ens podrem alliberar.
Thank you, dears.
Guys, it was so beautiful. Thank you very much.
It was.
And with this, we wish everyone sweet and revolutionary dreams.
It's true.
For tonight.
It's
Thank you
true.
for being with us. Thank you, Salo and Andrea, for hosting.
Thank you, Silvia and Graeme, for being
the most
fireflies ever.
Thank you, Alessandra, Nikolay. And yeah, see you soon, right?
very
Yes.
soon. Let's listen to each other. Ciao, Andrea.
Grazie, Andrea. Gracias.